Hello, Garland, Nixon here. Rules-based order. Lauren, order. Interesting word. The word of the powerful. Let's talk. Hello, Garland, Nixon here. We're going to talk about rules-based order. This word order, words mean something. But before we get started, guess what? I am at the center of an international controversy set up by a satirical tweet. You are going to love this one. You're going to love this one. It's only going to take a minute, but you got to see this. So check this out. You know, on Twitter, I always do these tweets, breaking news, and then I do some kind of a satire. Satire. And what I find interesting is that we live in such a crazy and absurd times that sometimes you can't tell the difference between satire and reality, apparently, because I will make an obviously satirical tweet and someone will look at it and go, oh my God, is that true? And afterwards, I think, what the hell society do we live in when people think that's true? How screwed up is it, right? So I make this tweet and then people like contact me and they're like, the government of Taiwan is totally upset. This tweet's spreading everywhere. And I'm like, well, I don't see it on my timeline. It's like I don't have like a million retweets. I know there's a lot of people in Taiwan, but I guess it must be hitting all the right places, right? So I'm like, just another breaking news satirical tweet. So I get a couple people that touch base with me and they're like, man, in Taiwan and China, this tweet's like big time. I'm like, wow. So then someone sends me, I got to show you this. So I'm gonna show you the center of this huge thing here that I'm in the middle of. Okay, so here we got it, right? Look at this. I get Taiwan's media and the government said that you're a Washington correspondent of the Sputnik news agency and a member of Putin's foreign propaganda organization. How do you respond, right? Well, so let's start with showing you the tweet. I mean, well, first of all, I'll show you the apparently, I don't read Chinese or whatever the hell it is, but I'm going to show you. This is the article. Hope you read Chinese. Look, so it's in whatever Taiwanese language. Just goes to show I'm not the kind of person that would know. But there's my tweet, and there's a picture of Putin in the background, so you know it's a real evil tweet. This is the evilest of tweets because there's a picture of Putin in the background, right? And I tweeted, breaking news. That's what I always do. I always start off with White House leaders, White House insiders leak that, and then I'll like make up a quote from Biden, right? So I put breaking news: White House insiders leaked that when asked if there could be any greater disaster than the neocon Ukraine project, President Biden responded, "Wait until you see our plan for the destruction of Taiwan." Right? So I do one in a million. All of a sudden, I'm hearing from these people in Taiwan, wow, the government's upset. The media's freaking out, right? And so then I get, how do you respond? So let me show you how old Watash here responded. So that's it. They're horrified because I have tweeted something that's clearly freaking them out. So here's what I tweeted with a number of things, but not the least of which was another breaking news. Breaking news. Taiwan government sets up tiny island for a military showdown between nuclear superpowers and then freaks out over an offensive tweet. I think that covers it. Yes, sirree. What are you doing? The government of Taiwan's like, yes, we will be armed by the United States, just like Ukraine, on the border of a nuclear superpower, just like Ukraine. And we will stand up to China with 1.4 billion people and maybe the most powerful military in the world, just like Ukraine. And what's going to happen then anyway? I forgot. Maybe I need to look at Ukraine and see how that's working out. And they're like, yeah, that's going to be fine. Don't worry. It couldn't possibly turn out the same way as Ukraine. Oh, by the way, look. Oh, my God. Did you see that tweet? We got to do something about that. This is an injustice that must not be stand. That's right, you all. It's not getting set up to be turned into a flat black pile of ashes that upsets the government of Taiwan. It's that some schlump on Twitter did a satirical tweet that they don't like. So you know what I did? I just put up there, hey man, watch my next video. you know, and I would advise staying away from like Dave Chappelle and Jimmy Dore, people like that, because they're a whole lot better at this satire thing than I am. Although Chappelle ain't gonna, you know, hurt anybody's feelings when it comes to foreign policy, but Jimmy Dore probably would. All right, I just wanted to update you on that before we got into the rules-based order. I'm going to take an angle on this. Words mean a lot, and we often don't dig into words. And being a former law enforcement officer and a person who taught that stuff in college, I talked about the origin of law enforcement and what law enforcement do and to preserve and protect. And what do those words mean, right? But there is a particular word that I take umbrage with that is often said, and it's very relative to rules-based order. Now, what is it? I'll talk about that a little bit and you'll see where I'm going. Rules-based order. What does that imply? So I've often said to people when they said, law and order, you for law and order? I said, absolutely not. I'm not for law and order. Heck no. Why? Why does Garland not for law and order? Are there any bad laws? You know, when I was in law enforcement, I can remember times when there were, you know, small laws that were passed. And law enforcement officers know this, particularly law enforcement administrators know this. Because if they would say, how do you get rid of a bad law? Enforce it. If you enforce a bad law, the people will get angry and they'll go to the legislature and they'll say, this is crap, get rid of it. And it'll get rid. That's the way you get rid of a bad law, right? Which implies something, that there are bad laws. Let's look at history. Have there ever been bad laws? There were laws that women and different minorities couldn't vote. There were laws that if a slave ran away, you had to bring them back. The Fugitive Slave Act. We can go through history and we can find all kinds of laws that in hindsight, go to Germany and 1940s. Look at the laws in Europe right now when it comes to the media, when it comes to pushing back against, do you want the kind of laws that they have in Germany? Poland recently in Germany, I think there's a person doing 3 years or something now in Germany for arguing against the government's policy against Russia. It's fascistic. Look at Israel. The laws, there are certain laws if you're Palestinian as opposed to if you're an Israeli or Jewish or whatever, right? So if you're a Palestinian, in Israel, you can be detained without charges indefinitely. They can grab you, they can take you away, indefinite dispense. They call it administrative detention, right? That's a law. Is it a fair law? So when people say, are you for law and order? I say no and no. Why? Because laws can be bad. And you don't want laws that are bad. Right now, you got a lot of people right now, the liberal, conservative, progressive, socialists that look at laws and say, that's a bad law. Looked at Supreme Court decisions. And now people in hindsight are looking, a lot of people are looking at laws that allowed indefinite amounts of money into politics, that and judicial precedences that allowed things that have corrupted our system. And they're saying that's a bad law or a judicial precedence, which is effectively a law, right? There's a lot of ways that laws and their equivalent can come into existence, and one is judicial precedent, right? Judicial rulings. So just because something's a law doesn't mean it's a good law or we support it. Now, in fact, there's hundreds of thousands of people in Israel right now because they're fascist government, that's my words, their government is doing terrible things in that they are passing some laws so that the party in power can overrule the courts. The courts can make a decision and the party in power can overturn it with a simple majority, which means you don't have a court. If the court rules in your favor and the party doesn't like it, they overturn it with a simple majority. That ain't much of a democracy, is it? You ain't going to argue that that's a democracy. Hey, the court says this. Right? What happens if the court convicts Bibi Netanyahu or finds that the prime minister can or can't do anything and the prime minister's party with a simple majority overrules it? So you don't have a democracy anymore. You have basically everybody, the courts work at the pleasure of the crown, as they would say in a feudal system. So law, judicial precedent, What is Garland like? Let me go to the next word before I go to what I want, right? Order. That's real problematic, right? So, well, you know what? Since when we go to order, we're going to go to the rules-based order. I'll jump ahead and I'll save that for last so that transitions us into the term rules-based order, because that's kind of the foundation of this particular video. If you don't aren't for laws because some laws aren't fair, what's another word for fair? just, right? So Garland Nixon is not for law. Garland Nixon is for what? Justice. One of the discussions that we're having now when we talk about the Eurasian coalition, right, of India and Russia and China versus the US-led coalition, is the issue of justice. The Eurasian coalition is saying we want a fair world order. What they're saying is they want a just world order. They're saying we want all countries, just because a country has different traditions than you do, right? Just because a country has a different history than you do, just because a country says that in our tradition, when it comes to the issue of a man and woman and marriage and genders and things like that, in the tradition of a particular country, they may not be where the United States liberal order is as far as the number of genders, and maybe the trans issue and all that may not be there. But I think what the quote fair world order is saying is this: you respect the traditions of each country, and you don't say we have to export our culture and our traditions onto other countries that aren't where we are with traditions and cultures, right? No. So that's a fair world order, but it's a just world order. It is a world order that says we respect your right to independence, whether we agree it or not. You have independence, and we can work under international law. We can work under international agreements, but it is a just world order. It is an even world order. It is not a hierarchical world order. It's not that some countries can do things and others can't, right? So I think that now, whether you agree with that's what's happening or not, that is the argument that is being made by China, by Russia, by Iran, by the BRICS coalition, by the Shanghai Cooperations Organization, by these new developing organizations that both economic and for economic and trade and security and all that. They're arguing, what they're arguing is that the order that is being pushed by the United States is an unjust order. The US uses a term, the rules-based order. Rules-based means nothing, because if you ask them for a copy of the rules or where you can find the rules, there is no copy, and there is no place to find them, because they're ad hoc. They're made up as necessary. That's why it's not a just world order. The US says the US invades Libya, invades Iraq, invades Syria, invades country after country after country, and then says a country can't invade another country. The US says that Russia does not have a sphere of influence on its own border. Russia can't draw lines on its own border. China doesn't have a sphere of influence on its own border. China can't draw red lines on its own border. However, the United States recently said to China, if you, the US recently said to China, we are providing weapons to Ukraine. If you, our ally meaning puppet, however, if you provide weapons to your ally, which is Russia, that's a red line for us. The United States said to China recently, Solomon Islands near China, in the Pacific, in China's area, right? The US said, if China tries to build a base on the Solomon Islands, that's a red line for us. Well, that's 7,341 miles from the US West Coast. So the US says, we'll draw a red line 7,400 miles away, but very close to China. But our red line extends into your sphere of influence. In other words, it's not just, it's a hierarchy. And we have a right, as being the top under this quote, rules-based order, being at the top of the hierarchy, we have a right to determine who has, that our sphere of influence is everywhere and yours is nowhere. In fact, the US said that a red line would be a moon base. That China can't have a base on the moon. China's trying to dominate the moon. So now the US says our red lines are on the moon. But Russia can't draw a red line on its border. China can't draw a red line on its border, but our red lines are on the moon. So what are we talking about? The term order implies something, and it ain't justice. What does it imply? The term order implies in itself a hierarchy. Order says some are here, some are there, some are here, some are there, right? The police, that's why when you talk about law enforcement, one of the things that a lot of conservatives in the United States are learning now when it comes to the police, when it comes to the FBI, See, traditionally conservatives were like, we're for law and order. And we got to support the police because they're for law and order. And the FBI support them, they're for law and order. Now, the FBI was going after the Communist Party. They were going after socialists. They were going after trade unions. They were going after hippies and anti-war. They were going after Black liberation and things of that nature, organizations. All of those groups were operating within their constitutional rights. Constitutionally, you can be in America, you can be a communist, you can be a socialist, you can be anti-war, you can be a trade, all of those things. But while the Constitution says you can do that, the hierarchical order says you can't, because those things are a threat to the people at the top. Keep in mind something. If you have some kind of an order, a hierarchy, right? There's an order in this town. Certain people are up here, other people are down there, right? Who's going to be most inclined to protect that order? The people at the top. If there's an order that puts you at the bottom, you think in America that like Black folks, do you think like slaves were like, yes sirree, in 1840 slaves were like, we got to protect this order? No, the order meant that they were picking cotton and getting beat. So no, they weren't thrilled about the order. Who wanted to maintain that order? The guy that owned the slaves wanted to keep the order, because he was happy with the place that he was at the top of the order. So whenever you see an order and someone's trying to maintain some kind of a social, political, economic, hierarchical order, class, whatever the system may be, the person at the top is the one that will be most motivated to maintain the order, because they're getting the most benefit from the order. And the person at the bottom will be the most motivated to destroy the order, because they're usually suffering at the hands of the people at the top of the order. Simple as that. So when you hear Tony Blinken and the U.S. saying we must protect the rules-based order, in every order, it's going to be hierarchical. And in every order, the person who is benefiting the most from that order will be the person who is the most inclined to protect and wish to perpetuate that order. The people at the bottom are won out. So that being said, that aligns with this reality. Right now, who the hell wants out of the rules-based order? When Putin said to the global south, hey, Africa, how you feel about the rules-based order? What's Africa like? Count us out. Hey, let me call the Muslims. Hey, Muslims. And the Muslims were like, yeah, hold on a second. Let me duck this drone. There's some American bombs coming down. Let me run down in this bomb shelter. Oh, wait a minute. There's a bunch of Yankees busting in my house to machine gun my family. Hold on. Let's see if we survive. Yeah, we survived. Yeah, Russia, what can I do for you? We're trying to get rid of the rules-based order. The Muslims were like, really? And you had to ask me that question? What do you think? They're genius? What do you think? They're Einstein? Hey, I'm running for my life. They're stealing our resources. They're bombing the hell out of us. They're overthrowing our country. Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. We would have stick around in that order. Get out of here. We're in. South America, sanctioned, overthrown, genocided. Latin America is like, yeah, count us out of that order. So when Putin and China, when Russia, China, India, how they worked out, ask India how the British treated them in that particular rules-based order. They were at the bottom of the order. So here's what you have. If you look at the Eurasian coalition versus the U.S. empire, right? The empire has for centuries been at the top of a particular order, a hierarchical order. Go back to before slavery. What you have? You had sugar plantations all over South America and all in the Caribbean. And the Spanish and the French, they were making a fortune. Everybody's making a fortune off of these sugar plantations, all different types of plantations that they had, right? They're getting rich off of them. They were doing pretty good with that order. Then they realized we can do cotton and tobacco and raise other things. Down south, they're doing peppers, you name it, right? So they realized we can make a lot of money with slaves and plantations. It was about money. And so, boom, we got an order. They got to maintain that order. And because the European, the colonial powers were able to take advantage of these other countries, they wanted to maintain an order where they got rich, on the backs of other people. So now we get to a point where those people who have been smushed for years say, hey, you know what? We don't like this, but we don't really have a way out. So Russia starts punching back. China gets enough economic horsepower, and they say, we're down with Russia. Who's in? Right off the bat, the U.S. thought, oh, India will be on our side. India's like, what do you mean on your side, Yankee? We ain't rolling with the UK. We're down with Russia and China. Even Saudi Arabia, they're like, well, we know the Saudis are our boys. I mean, we know the Saudis are that, bro, Saudi, what's up? And the Saudis were like, yeah, right. Get out of here, Yankee. We're down with the Ruskies. Africa, forget it. You know, so what you found was and this is just, and let's just say this just makes sense. You had a world order that benefited the US and the colonial powers in Europe, right? At the expense of Latin America, South America, the Middle East, Asia, Russia, etc. When these countries see an opportunity to upset that order, they're like, we're out of it. All Tony Blinken's doing when he talks about the rules-based order is reminding the global South, reminding all of those rules-based order. He keeps using the term order. He thinks he's saying something. He's only talking to the people who benefit from the order. If you keep reminding people they're in order, that there's an order, those who suffer at the hands of that order will constantly be motivated to overthrow it and overturn it and get out from under it any way they can. Any place is better than here. As Malcolm X said about the field slave. When you ask the field slave to run away, the field slave says anywhere is better than here. So when you talk to the other people that are benefiting from the order, the problem they have is this. Oftentimes, more often than not, where you stand on an issue determines where you sit. You are looking from a particular vantage point. If you're in a room and you're all the way in the back of the room and you're looking at the professor up front, right? And you may be way up high. And then the professor is lecturing. And then the other person's at the front of the room and they're watching and they're listening. And the other person's over here, right? Everybody has a different perspective on the professor. Everybody sees him different. Everybody hears a different volume, things like that, right? They'll get they may hear words different. So where they're sitting determines their perspective on that professor and on that entire room and then on that entire lecture. Where you sit determines where you stand on an issue oftentimes, right? Because the colonial powers have been sitting atop the hierarchy, they don't even understand what I'm saying right now. They don't even get it because they don't have a context for anything other than, well, there's an order and it works well. Let me tell you a story. True story. Some people like it or get it, whatever. It's real. Who cares? I was in a police academy and there was a captain who was teaching the police academy. And he was telling me that way back when, oops, sorry about that. He was telling me that way back when, hold on a second, in the 60s or something, right? He's an old guy and he's telling me that many years ago, he lived on the eastern shore of Maryland in a town called Cambridge. Cambridge was known well for, it was back then, you know, in the U.S. was still apartheid, and Cambridge was in a kind of an apartheid area, and the black people in there were very mistreated and downtrodden. They didn't have any rights. So apparently there's a story of Cambridge. A black guy named H. Rat Brown was his name. He came to Cambridge and he said to the black people there, hey, man, you're getting screwed. You don't have to take it, right? And they had a lot of uproars and fires and all kinds of stuff, right, during the 60s. And so this guy said, look, this guy came in and he said, he told the black people in our town that they didn't have to put up with the way they were being treated. And, you know, that we had a lot of uproar. And he said, now, granted, everything wasn't fair, but, you know, we were okay with the things they were, with things the way they were. And me being the rabble rouser, not knowing how to keep my mouth shut, I stuck my hand up. Yes, recruit Nixon. I said, well, apparently everybody wasn't okay with the way things were. He's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, you said we were okay with the way things were. I said, the black people burned the damn town down. Apparently they weren't okay with the way things were, or they wouldn't have burned the town down, right? And it was a volatile time in America. Those kinds of things happened, right? What was going on then? There was a social order, and in that social order, there was a hierarchy, and there was a particular group at the bottom of that social order, just like we're talking about now, right? And when someone came to the people at the bottom of the social order and said, "How you like it here?" and they said, "We don't like it at all," and he said, "You can do something about it. What the hell? What do you got to lose? You can say to the world, in this town, we ain't happy. And if the town says we ain't doing nothing about it, then you can say, well, then if we ain't happy, ain't nobody going to be happy." And that's apparently what happened. Now, why did I tell that story? The global South. Look at the Russians, look at the Chinese. They're saying the United States is telling every damn body what to do with their rules-based order. It is a domination. It is a feudal. It is an international feudal system, an international system of nobility. The rules-based order is simply as that. It's international feudalism. It says the U.S. is noble. I'll put it to you like this. Let's do this a feudal system. The United States and the UK, they're nobility. Right, the U.S. and the Anglo-Saxon U.S. and UK considers themselves nobility. Now, beneath the nobility, what do you have? You have the commoners, right? In a feudal class system, the commoners would be what? And their names would even denominate what their trade was. Oftentimes, the name was black. They were a blacksmith. They were a furrier. They were a person who did horseshoes. They had a trade. Right. And they could make a good living. And so therefore you had the noble class, the nobility, who lived, high on the hog. You had the commoners who had some kind of trade, and they didn't live too bad. They lived okay. They lived in the middle. That was the equivalent of a middle class. And then you had the peasants, and the peasants' life wasn't happy. And in a feudal system, the majority is the peasants. What the U.S. has done, what Tony Blinken's rule-based order is to recreate a system of feudalism worldwide. Therein, the United States is the noble class. They're noble, and the UK. They have an expectation of rights simply because of who they are. They got their rights at the birth canal. They used to have in feudal system, they'd have a jousting contest, and you had to prove nobility back 4 generations in order to get in a particular jousting class, a jousting tournament. Maybe another one, it could be 2. It was the more exclusive the jousting tournament, the more generations you had to go back to show nobility, right? As the saying says about the noble class, they're like potatoes. The best part of them is in the ground. So you're in the most exclusive jousting club. You got to go back 5 generations to prove nobility. You're in the least, you don't even have to prove it past 1 generation, but you're in the noble class, right? The U.S. now says, in our rules-based order, which is nothing but a feudal system, if you're born the U.S. or the UK, keep in mind something. What do you first say about that? You're English speakers, the Anglo-Saxon, the English speakers. You're born English speakers, right? You're U.S., you're UK, you're the noble class. You have an expectation to do whatever you want to as you see fit. That's why they say, look, we invaded Iraq or we invaded Libya, whatever. Now, Russia says, get off my border. First of all, you're a peasant. You have no right to tell me that. Secondly, Russia says, if you don't, I'm invading that country. Well, you can't do that. Why? Because you're not a member of nobility. Only the noble class can do those kind of things. So Russia does it. And they go, oh, no, he didn't. No, as the rappers, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. Oh, no. Russia is not even a commoner. They consider Russians a member of the peasant class, right? They're officially the black people of white people, right? So they're like, look, can you believe what this person did? He invaded another country. And people are like, well, don't you invade other countries? But of course. But based on our hierarchical class system, I'm a member of the noble class. I have the prerogative to do certain things. Invade other countries is one of them. But he's a peasant class. He doesn't have the prerogative. He has a different expectation of rights. When you simply look at it from the perspective of fairness, you say, it's not fair. How can you say you can do this, but another person can't do the same thing you did, and they may have a better justification than you do. So it doesn't make sense. It's unjust. When you look at it from the perspective of a feudal class system and an order, it makes perfect sense in the rules-based order and the feudally. See, the rules-based order, the rules are feudalism. That's what they don't tell you about the rules-based order. Well, what are the rules? We can't tell you that. Why? Because the rules are feudalism. That's the rules. And we can't just say it's a feudal order. I don't know if you checked it out lately. The UK still has a queen and king. Does that tell you something about it? It's feudalism. They still got a queen and king. So the feudal system says the United States, as a noble class, has the prerogative to beat, slap, rape, murder, whatever they want to members of lower classes. But nobody else in that lower class can do it. For instance, the master, a slave owner, or in the feudal system, the peasants who were effectively slaves. The master owns slaves. There's a female slave. He can rape her, he can beat her, he can do whatever he wants to, but another slave can't. Another slave can't do that. Why? Because they don't have that expectation of rights. They can't dispense with people of their own class at their whim, whereas someone of the noble class can do it. Now, if one of the workers on the farm wants to rape one of the slaves, he has to ask permission. He can still do it with permission of the slave owner. So he still has a greater expectation of rights. The slave woman can't say to one of the men, the white guys that work on the slave, work for the master, she can't say no to him. Doesn't have that authority. He can't do it without someone on a higher up on the hierarchy, right? So the rules-based order, the rules are the rules of feudalism. So let's continue on with this analogy. Under the rules of feudalism, you've got the kings and the noble class, which would be the US, the UK. Now you have the commoners. The commoners would be the French and the Italians and the other traditional colonial powers. They don't have the same prerogative as the US and the UK. They don't. But they have a greater prerogative than the Russians and the Chinese and the brown, yellow, green people in the global South. And they know their place. See, people are like, well, why isn't Germany's not doing anything? France is not doing anything. Why they're being abused and mistreated? Because they understand their place within the context of a feudal system. So to them, they haven't been violated. You ask Germany, you ask the people, the rulers of Germany, the ruling elite class, hey man, you guys were violated. They would say, well, not really. Why? Because in the context of the order in which we live and accept, the masters in the noble class do have the prerogative to treat us as they wish. And if they choose to blow our stuff up or beat us up, hey man, in the rules-based feudal order, they have the prerogative to do that. And we don't have anything to say. Why would we get mad at them? For Germany to get mad at the US, to push back on the US, wouldn't be pushing back on the US. They'd be pushing back on the order, which they have accepted, on the feudal order, the rules-based feudal order. And they ain't going to do that because they've benefited from that order too. And they expect to continue to benefit from that order. They expect to sit under their masters, and their masters will say, do what I say. And in the long term, life may not be good for you, but it'll be better than it is for the slaves. And they'll be like, okay. And whatever happens to us, we've accepted this order. It's a feudal order. We're commoners. The other part of an order like this, of a feudal order, and this is what makes a feudal order work. You might have heard this. The thing that keeps the slave in slavery is the mind of the slave, right? In a feudal order, the thing that makes a feudal order work is that the people who are born into this order accept their station in life. I was born a commoner, and I can never have an expectation of being higher, but I can never have an expectation of being lower. And I damn sure don't want to go lower because I see the people below me and it ain't pretty. So as long as and that's the problem with the order. And I think that's the problem that the rules-based order is going to eventually run into. And that is, as long as the commoners can look at the peasants and feel that they're above the peasants, it's good to be a commoner. They'll do everything they can to perpetuate the order because they're still above the peasants. But what happens when the commoners, the France, the Germany, the Italies, look at the peasants and they say, our way of life, our standard of living is dropping down to the same as the peasants. At that point, it doesn't benefit them to be in the order. And they may start thinking, I don't know about perpetuating this order anymore. It ain't helped me but so much. What's in it for me? I once had a professor say that. He says everybody listens to the same radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? So in order for the US and the UK to keep the other countries interested and motivated to perpetuate this feudal system that they've constructed, there has to be something in it for them. Now, you can take that that's in the macro view. In a more micro view, in order for the leaders of the UK or Germany or Italy to convince the people of their country to work to perpetuate the order, there has to be something in it for them. So what happens when the people in this order say, man, I ain't living no better than the guy over there in Zimbabwe? The guy in, and they look over and they say, wait a minute, Brazil's passing us, Venezuela's passing us, the Middle East, for God's sake. I'm in an order that not only is it not benefiting me, the people in another order are living better. And what's happening in the global South and all of these other countries, they've been living in a feudal order, right? Let me give you the Malcolm X said. He talked about slavery. And what he said was, you might have heard this story before, and it's very appropriate. And it has to do with an order, right? And he said, in slavery, you had the field slave and the house slave. The house slave lived much better. They got nice clothes. They lived in the house. They were warm, and they had heat in the wintertime. They dressed well. They bathed regularly. They ate the master's food when the master was finished, so they ate well. They slept in the attic or in the basement. They slept in a nice dry place with no rain on them, right? So, but the field slave lived in a hut. He worked from sun up to sundown. He was beaten. He got a few morsels of food, and that's how he lived, a paltry, meager existence. He was unhappy. So what happened? When someone came along to the master, to the house slave and said, let's run away, the house slave said, run away? Where am I going to live better than here? You got to be out of your mind. I ain't running nowhere. And when they came to the field slave and said, let's run away, the field slave said, hell, let's go. Any place is better than here. My life is hell. Right? Let's apply that to the rules-based feudalist order. So what happens when Russia says to France or Germany, man, this ain't working for us? France or Germany says, time, buddy. Look what we're living under the United States. We're hanging out at cafes. We're drinking wine and cheese and grapes, and we're friends. The U.S. is helping us rob Africa blind. We got all of this gold, and from Africa, no gold mines. Life ain't bad. No thanks. We ain't going nowhere. But when Russia and China say to the Middle East, when they say to Africa, when they say to the field slaves, hey, man, would you like to get out from under the rules-based order? They say, any place is better than here. You kidding me? The U.S. is overthrowing our government. They're bombing us, and we're still living in poverty. So the rules-based order, just understand it as a system of feudalism. And that is, and it only makes sense that it would, because the head of it, the foundation of the rules-based order, the foundation of the U.S. empire is what? It's the British feudal system. It all starts at the British crown that spread out to the U.S. And then when the British crown lost its dominance, it simply attached itself to the U.S. empire and said, we'll be the brains and you be the brawn. And so they got these knuckle draggers in the U.S. and they said, you go out like gorillas and beat people up and blow up their stuff when we tell you, and we'll maintain this order and we'll be at the top of the order. And there's always been Russia. Has been out there, has been a problem for them, because Russia has always been waiting to screw up their order, because Russia won't go along with the order. And they're screwing their order up, and they don't appreciate it. And God forbid what happens, here comes China. And they're like, hey, so the people in the rules-based order say, we found a way to get rich. We got this little country over here called China, got lots of labor, real cheap labor. We'll take advantage of them. They're peasants. That's what you use them for, right? So they move all of their stuff over to China. They start building it, and things are going well. And they never suspected the Chinese would be smart enough and industrialist enough to take the knowledge that they were having, the science that they got, et cetera, and to expound on it, and then to expand their economic wherewithal. But they did. And they were, and now they have. And now they're, when the US says we're being challenged by China, they don't mean that China is challenging them like a verb, that China is saying we're deliberately going to do something to surpass you. What they mean is China is a challenge to our order. We have a feudalist order, and under our feudalist order, China has to remain. They were born at a particular station in that order, and they have to remain at that station, and they have to be willing to remain at the station, and China ain't willing to do it. And now you got Russia, and Russia never was willing to do it, and now they've got an ally that's very powerful. And now the people who benefited off of this order had to come up with a name other than feudalism, so they called it the rules-based order. And now they're trying to push back, but it's way too late. It's way too late. You see, they pushed too hard on this thing for too long. They've robbed and stole for too long. And everybody who suffered in the order as a result of feudalism, all the peasants now see an out. All the field slaves see Russia and China coming up to them and saying, would you like to run away? And they're saying, any place is better than here. That's what you have. That's the key to understanding the rules-based order. And that's the key to understanding why all these countries went out. And when you say order, the orders have rules. And what the people this new order in this, what they're calling a fair world order as opposed to a new world order. And what they're simply saying is it's not feudalism. In reality, what is it? In reality, what is it? It's sharing with your neighbors. It's working with other people. It's respecting other cultures and other people that are different from you, right? It is a juster order. And so what's happening is you've got a bunch of people saying, we don't know if we'll be able to do it, but we want to come along. We want to try to create a world order that's more just. But because this one's feudal, we certainly can't create one that's less just than a feudal one, brutal. It is a brutal feudal order. And the nature of feudal orders are brutality. So that's where we are. And so now the problem the US has is it doesn't have the wherewithal to stand up against the powers that are pushing back against the order, because you've got two elements that are pushing back against, three elements that are pushing against the order. Let me name the three elements. If we're going to use the hierarchical term as they would see it, the bottom, as they would call it, would be the countries that they have oppressed and robbed and stole. Latin America, Middle East, South America, Asia, etc. Right? They see them as the bottom. Then you have another group that's very important. That would be the Saudis, the Brazilians, the Venezuelans, etc. What are they? Even, and add India, the Indians to it. These are countries that aspire to be regional, dare I say, world powers. Those particular groups look at what's going on. They look at the US's vicious, brutal attack on the people at the top of their order, and they say, I aspire to be what Russia and China is one day. And I know what's coming from the US. So I got to support Russia and China so I can bust up that order. So I'll have a chance to break through one day and there'll be nobody to hold me down. And then, of course, you've got the leaders of the order, which is Russia and China. Countries that have a you got to have three things. You're going to make it as a country, a powerful country. What are those three things? You got to be able to feed yourself. You got to have energy. And you got a military to defend yourself. Those are three things I believe you have to make it in this rough and tumble world, right? Russia's got a military and they can fight. They always had one and they always could. Look at history. There's a lot of things you want to do, but tangling with Russia on the battlefield, let's face it, at one point in Stalingrad, I believe they were losing 2,400 soldiers every 3 hours. And they won that battle. They won that battle. Man, you don't want to tangle with people like that. So the fact of the matter is this: the noble class is pampered. They are very pampered. The Russians haven't been as pampered. It's cold in Russia. Things are getting better for them now, right? But they had to deal with hard living for centuries, real hard living, up in the cold, in the struggle, and poor, right? They'll get down in the mud and fight you if they have to protect what little they got. You want to fight a guy who's lived a hard and poor life, he'll take an axe and beat the hell out of you, right? So the Russians have had a difficult time. They've been attacked time and again. If you want to go to knuckle junction with Russia, Ain't nobody walking away from that one happy. Now, what do you have China? You have China that is now has become an industrial and technological and an industrial technological power, and they have allies. So what can China do? They have industrial power, which means they've got money, so they can get their energy from. They can feed themselves. They got a lot of room. They can grow a lot of stuff. They can feed themselves. They because they have money, they build their military is growing, and they have a formidable military already. And last but not least, they got a very close ally that's got unlimited amounts of energy, so they can get their energy from their ally. And see, the other part of it is this: because the United States is threatening both China and Russia, they've forced them to come together as a single ally. So now, what I would say about one country, I got to say about two. Can Russia and China feed themselves? Yes. They're connected. They have a border. Can Russia and China defend themselves? You best damn well be sure they can. Can Russia and China provide their own energy? Absolutely, because Russia's got unlimited energy. It can take care of them and China and a whole lot more people than that too. Russia can feed and energize a whole lot of people, and everybody knows it. And China can feed and create and build, and they can defend. So the U.S. now is up against a challenge to the system. And I'll say this: they may have a little bit of a chance, which they wouldn't. But let's say this: if they were just going against Russia and China, but they ain't. They ain't. Their system is being challenged by the majority of the world. And see, now, why is that? Think about what I said about a feudal class, the feudal system. In a feudal system, the smallest group is the noble class, and it has to be. So the noble class in a feudal system is a tiny percentage. It's the top 1%. You know, that's the people who benefit the most from the feudal class. Look at Saudi Arabia. I forgot what is there. 13,000 members of the royal family, but in the context of the whole country, that ain't many people. But those are the people who benefit from that system the most. They're the top of their particular feudal class, of their monarchical class. So the U.S., if you look at it, what are they? 4% of the world's population. Add Britain, and you got like 4.1% of the world's population, because England is the size of a U.S. state at best. So, I mean, literally, I think we're getting to the point where, what is there, 25, 30,000 people in the New York City Police Department? The truth of the matter is, the British Army ain't much bigger than the New York City Police Department. So the Brits are a flea. And so you've got this tiny noble class now who benefit the most, and they're the ones. Look, first of all, they're the ones who are all in. You look at Europe. The elite ruling class, the nobility, they're all in. Look at America, they're all in. But if you start looking at the numbers now, the working class people, right? The commoners are saying, man, this is hurting too much. We don't like this. We want out. The numbers are starting to say in America, so you've got a noble class in the context of the entire system, which would be the US and UK. But then you have to do it and say, what about the noble class in the context within that system? The top 1% in the US and UK and throughout Europe, they're benefiting, but even their people in their countries are starting to back off and say, we don't like this because we're not benefiting. But what they don't really get is that their leaders are like, you don't understand, this whole thing's going to fall apart and we're all going to drop. And it's true, but there's no way to stop it now. It's a snowball rolling downhill. It's one of these things, like the more they squeeze it, the more they hold on to it, the more they try to hold on to this feudal system and protect this feudal system, the more they doom it. And that's where we are. So that's it. I think I've explained the rules-based order, a feudal system. That's all it is. It's a way of saying a feudal system. And once you identify the rules-based order as a feudal system, then all you have to do is look throughout the system, look throughout that order, that social order of nobility, of commoners and peasants, and see who in the world order falls where. And what you have is a revolt of the peasants, the peasant class. But the peasant class, imagine this: what if the peasant class went and got a bunch of guns and got a bunch of things to defend themselves? They do. They've got powerful leaders in Putin and Xi. And I would say Modi and even MBS and the Iranians and the Venezuelans. So they got a lot of powerful leaders. That's why the U.S. is looking at world war. We want to go after the Iranians. We want to go after this group. We want to go after North Koreans. There's a lot of people around the world that are nodes in this network. I could argue that they're like nodes in a network of peasant class that's pushing back. And the U.S. is trying to go after every node, but they're being overwhelmed. They're overwhelming themselves. All right. Somebody says GDP versus debt. Here's the other part about it too. Keep in mind something about GDP. You got to understand this. It is a Wall Street and City of London construct. GDP is bullcrap. Doesn't mean anything. They created one so they can say, oh, the US GDP is smaller than Italy. Oh, really? I mean, excuse me. What is it? The Russian GDP is like equivalent of South Korea. Well, really? Does South Korea have an army like the Russians? Do they produce the steel that the Russians produce? Can they produce the tanks? And are they producing their own high-end fighter jets and bombers and a nuclear arsenal? If GDP is an accurate measure of wealth, then the fact of the matter is, how the hell do the Russians produce the things that they produce in comparison with other countries? The steel, the cement, the foodstuffs. Look what they produce. Look at their military with the Sukhoi 25s and 30s and 57s. Look at the bombers. Look at the amount of hardware they have. Look at their the technology they have. Look at the things that Russia has. That ain't South Korea, my friends. That ain't Italy. Italy and South Korea are not a fly, not a speck on the back of Russia. Russia is a legitimate superpower. Why? Because GDP does not measure what you produce, what you put out, what you make, what you create. That's a whole different animal. And if a government can buy a plane, if the U.S. can build a what are they, an F-35, and it costs 400 million or 170 million or some crazy number, right? And the Su-57 is as good as or better, and the Russians can build it for 20 million. Then purchasing power parity starts to come into account. How many the Russians can build like 4 nuclear subs for every one that the U.S. builds. So purchasing power parity then magnifies and amplifies the gross domestic product, right? So what you produce and how much it costs you to produce it, how much steel you produce, all these things makes a difference. And how you maintain your currency and the level of debt. But GDP doesn't mean anything. It is a fake. It's just like GDP is just like derivatives, credit default swaps, and things of that nature, asset-backed securities. It's magic. Invented by Wall Street, means nothing. Means, I put it like this: how's this little old GDP? Look at Russia on the battlefield and look at what they're producing. So what we're going to do now that we've solved all that stuff and we've dealt with the government of Taiwan is we're going to go through the super chats. We're going through the super chats. Going through the super chats today. All right. Oops. I guess we ain't. Mark says, Garland, did you see Ray McGovern and Jeff Sachs testify at UN? Also, NOAA Palestine pollution model showing dispersion was disappeared. Dispersion. I don't know about the dispersion, but I interviewed Ray McGovern today for one of my radio shows, and they did a fantastic job. Yeah, they were awesome. You know what's funny thing about that is the Russians are putting the pressure on the U.S. and it's putting them in a bad spot, because if I say we want an investigation and like the perpetrator, who's going to say I don't? The perpetrator. Hey, we need an investigation. Yeah, we don't. Well, wait a minute. Aren't you part of NATO? Yes. Was NATO attacked? Yes. Don't you want to find out who did it? Nah, we're all right. We handle it. We're good. We'll look into it. We'll get back to you later on that. It's not necessary, all of this investigating stuff. People are busy. They could be growing food or doing something. Don't waste your time doing an investigation. We don't think it's that important right now. Well, what do you know? The perpetrators don't want an investigation to move forward. But as I said, remember, in the context of a hierarchy, a hierarchical order, Germany was born with a certain expectation of rights. And they are willing to live within the order that gives them that expectation of rights. And within the context of that order, they don't have a right to question the U.S. The U.S. has a right to attack them, bomb them, do whatever they want to do them on a whim. And they have no right to say anything. And they've accepted that order. So they're going to defend the order. They're going to continue to defend that order. Garland, do you have a swag store like them Nixon 2024 hats? You know, people have been saying that. I really got to do something, right? Maybe I'll order them. I need a swag store. Maybe I'll put Let's Talk on it or the Nixon 2024 hats or something. I don't know. You know, I like my floppy bucket hats. I got a bucket and I got a Nixon 2024 bucket hat too. Yeah, maybe I need to start my swag store. Oh God, I got enough to do. I got a drone, man. I got 2 drones over here that I'm trying to get going here. I mean, I might have to attack a small country or something. I got 2 drones over there. I ain't even got time for my drones. It's almost fishing season. Most nations around the world delight in Russia standing up to the West. Absolutely. Because most nations in the world suffer oppression at the hands of the feudalistic rules-based order. They don't benefit from it. Let us continue. We're going through the super chats. We're going through the super chats. Through the super chats today. And Eric Suarez, good old Eric. I know that guy, man. He's a good friend of mine. Eric is doing some fine work when it comes to Alex Saab and South America. Words can't describe the hope Russia has given to the global South. I felt my chains loosen a little. That's right. And you notice the chains loosen. Notice the metaphor. The metaphor is one of slavery at the hands of the king. They're going through the super chats. Love you, Eric Suarez. Keep up the fine work, man. He's got a great book on Alex Saab. I don't know if it's out yet. But follow Eric Suarez on Twitter. Who else but the Sparkster? Great work, Garland. Thank you, Sparky. Just trying to clear up some things. Let's see. Let's look at a couple other things. NOAA admin predicts Ohio pollution hit New York and the model was disappeared. Yeah, good old NOAA. That's probably a freaking NOAA balloon they shot down. GDP is the multiple trace of the same amount. It's illogically multiplied, like passes in soccer. It's the same ball, but they multiply it by the same number of passes. Exactly. It's garbage. You know, look, during after 2008, when you had a bank, the bank takes your house, right? So now it has an asset that it can say, okay, that's worth some money. It then cashes in on the on the insurance that it had. When it took the loan for your house, it took out insurance on that loan. That's called a credit swap, right? So that if your loan went bad, that default credit swap would go to the insurance company and they pay it off. So it takes the home, then the insurance company, which in that instance was AIG, paid them off for the loan. So now the insurance company has your house and it has the loan paid off. It then sells the house and makes money again. And what happens as far as GDP? That's counted as profit. So that happened for millions of homes. So the bank says, look at this gigantic profit I made. I got the house and I got paid off for the loan. And then I sold the house the second time and I kept the loan money again. Guess what happens? Banks do all of this over and over. They make a fortune. And it counts as profit. And they say, look at this, the gross domestic product went up. All these banks made more money. And they say, we've got a recovery. And all the people say, but I didn't get any of it because that's the one out. It's not set up that way. It's a fraud. Sparkster says, not surprising, NOAA hid East Palestine data. They often receive historical climate data to bolster the globalist climate change narrative. That's the thing, you know, when it comes to this Palestine thing, they don't give a damn about the people. Screw the people. This ain't even about the people. Now they'll just change the information. Thanks for doing this, man. Sometimes your analogies and explanations are hilarious. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And that is from Vinesh Patel. Bob Patel, he gets it. Vinesh Patel is a person, obviously, clearly either of Indian descent or, you know, at least they got an Indian name. And the Indian people understand what I'm talking about when it comes to the Brits. Bob Baker, thanks a lot, Bob. What a great name. How about this? Vanesh says the UK nobility and establishment hates Russia because the peasants in 1970 rose up against the czars and company and chopped their heads off. The czar was Queen Victoria's cousin. The English establishment never forget, and they always come for revenge. Ask the Afghans. Exactly. How about Wanda LaFlata Kreitzer? I know I screwed that up. Just a thank you. Thanks a lot, Wanda. Wow, that's awesome. Biden loves the term rules-based order, has called it the liberal world order before as well, right? And all it really is feudalism. Anybody else? And we end with Sparky. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. Let me give you the usual. I'm out before I get out of here. We've been on, holy moly, exactly 1 hour. It seems like everything I do runs an hour, and I don't even know why. It always runs an hour. Couple of things. If you can afford to help the channel, go PayPal. You can do that. You can see everything scrolling across the bottom. buymeacoffee.com/Garland NH. There's my Cash App information. If you can slip a couple beans, anything to help the channel, certainly appreciate it. Don't forget, go to rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. Rockfin is fantastic. It's like YouTube, only better, mainly because there ain't no advertisements. So you can, and when and if they toss me off YouTube, you can go to Rockfin. You can watch this anytime and not get advertisements. And it's a free speech platform, so there's no censorship. They don't censor anything over there. Now you say to yourself, well, that sounds great, no advertisements, but how does Rockfin stay on the air? That's simple. It's a subscription-based service. You can sign up and get everything for free. However, all content creators, of which I'm a content creator, does one subscriber only show per week. So I do one show for subscribers only per week, just one. And it's every Wednesday from 9 to 10 a.m. It's myself and Scott Ritter. You'll see I do the first 15 minutes on all my channels, but the rest of it I do as a Rockfin exclusive. So go to Rockfin, sign up. If you can afford to sign up, it's $14.99 a month, but if you sign up for a year, they give you a knock off a couple months. It comes up to $9.99 a month if you can afford to do that. If you can't, don't even worry about it. We do one subscriber show a week. The rest of it, everything else is for totally, absolutely free. So just go there and sign up. If you can do the subscriber, great. Help keep a great free, uncensored free speech platform on the air. If you can't, man, if you can't afford it, just don't even worry about it. Just sign up and just make sure that if they toss me off of YouTube, you're over there and you can go right on there for free and watch it, share it, things of that nature. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks a lot. Veronius Video says, Garland, wait. I'm trying to send. What are you trying to send, Veronius Videos? Trying to send something. Garland, wait, I'm trying to send. All right, Varonis Videos. I'm going to wait and see what it was they're trying to send. What are death threats? I don't know. Bachelor R says they love Jimmy Dore. Yeah, I had a good time. Man, I went to the most awesome hangout. After what was it? I went to this weekend. There was this big anti-war rally, and with libertarians, who the hell ever, I don't know. Whoever was there was there. Garland. I'm going to say what I got to say. And Harry Smith says it equals $12.49. I don't know, Harry. I'm sorry, Harry. He says it's $12.49 a month, not $9.99. I'm a mathematician. I ain't. If you can afford it, sign up. If you can't, don't. That's all I can say. I don't want anybody to sign up that can't afford it in the first place. So that's the reality. So at any rate, check this out. So Saturday night, it was awesome. So I went and hung out right to this get together. I wouldn't call it a party. It was a get together, right? And there was Max Blumenthal, Jimmy Dore. I'll tell you who all was there. Max Blumenthal was there. Jimmy Dore was there. Jackson Hinkle was there. Kim Iverson was there. I mean, man, imagine that. It were everybody. That was just like the handful. Lots and lots of people were there. It was like the most fun thing in the world, just hanging out with all that people. How cool is that? All right. Veronica. Okay, well, there we go. Hey, Garland, throughout this amazing analysis, I was your stenographer in the live chat trying to spread our anti-war message. I hope you rewatch the stenographer fee because I would love to help keep the chat hit. I don't know. Do me a favor, Veronica. Email me. I'm going to put my email in here, right? My email is easyn@gmail.com. Boom. My email, if it shows up, is garlandin@gmail.com. It looks like it popped up twice. So send me an email. I'm not sure what you're saying, but send me an email so I can understand. The other thing is I understand I'm supposed to have, what do you call them? the people that monitor. I don't know this stuff very well. I always hear the Duran talking about thanking people who are in there monitoring or whatever the hell they're supposed to be doing. So if somebody's interested in that, email me. Being the what do you call it? The person who throws out the trolls. So always good. We want to get moderators. There you go, moderators. garlandin@gmail.com. If somebody wants to be a moderator, and I got to figure out how to make moderators, maybe you can help me there too. So thanks a lot, everybody. Let's see. Mr. Wonderful says, I'll be happy to be a mod. I'll email you. Great. Thanks a lot, you all. Talk to you soon. Let's see. What's today? Oh my God, today's Wednesday, isn't it? I was on with Scott Ritter. I'm on twice today. Whatever. Natalie and Clayton from Redacted were there. They covered something. Well, Kinky emailed me too. Great. I'd love to talk to Kinky. Bottom line is, well, I don't know them that well, so I didn't see them. They weren't at the party I was at, though. I didn't see them anyway because I don't know them, but they do good work. I don't know them, but I do know they do really good work. I like Redacted. It's a great channel. You know what I like about Redacted before I go? I can't tell their ideology. They just seem to be covering stuff. They don't seem like they're right wing or left wing or whatever. They just seem like professional media people who are covering stuff. I like that. I appreciate that. That's what, look, I'm an unabashed lefty, right? Everybody knows me. I'm a lefty, but I'm not a member of any party, any group, any organization, because I feel that it's critical that that if I'm going to do my job for you and analyze things in an unbiased way, that I'm not connected to some group that blinds me. And I got to say, well, we can't, I'm a member of this group. Therefore, we like this or we don't like that. And I got to try to stay away from that. So I feel it's my duty at any rate. But yeah, I think they do. I think they do well. All right. Thanks a lot, you guys. I'm tired. And one of the things I've been trying to do lately is get a little more rest. And I've been doing pretty good. So I'm going to keep that up. Thanks a lot, Kinky. Wait, email me, Kinky. We'll talk.